Okay, hi, so welcome to this video where we're going to talk about transpiration and the stomata. Now, if you haven't seen my previous video where we discussed transpiration and translocation, please do go and have a look at that because I'm going to assume that you know everything that we spoke about in that video. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about transpiration. We're going to speak about what affects how quickly transpiration occurs and how that is controlled by the stomata, or how certain parts are managed by the stomata, I should say. Alright, now, first of all, I'm going to go back to a diagram, a picture which I drew, which isn't very good, but it was to show the transpiration stream. So the blue arrows are showing water, which are lost, first of all, from the leaves, okay? And that creates the transpiration stream, which causes water to be basically sucked up the xylem vessels in order to replace it. Now, what we're thinking about now are the things which affect how quickly this happens. So how quickly are these arrows lost from the leaves? So is the water leaving quickly? Or is the water not leaving so quickly? Maybe there's only a little bit of water being lost from the plant, and that's based on certain conditions. And so the first one I'm going to mention is light intensity. Okay, light intensity. So now, how is that related to transpiration? Well, when light intensity is high, okay, so a higher light intensity leads to a let's spell that right, leads to a higher rate of transpiration. Okay, and you might be thinking, well, why is that the case? Light intensity isn't involved, or it doesn't directly relate to heat. Why does that lead to a higher rate of transpiration? Now, basically what happens is the guard cells, do you remember that the guard cells are what are opening and closing the stomata? The guard cells actually close the stomata when it's dark, but open them when it's light. And there's a good reason for that. So let's just quickly demonstrate. If it was really sunny, right, and we had a lot of light out, that is the best time for photosynthesis to occur. But for photosynthesis to occur, CO2 needs to come into the leaves because CO2 is needed for photosynthesis. Well, how is CO2 going to come in, or how is a large amount of CO2 going to come in? Well, it's going to come in through the stomata. And so the guard cells actually open the stomata to allow that CO2 to come in. And that's a good thing. However, the result of that, if you have your stomata open, is that leads to a higher rate of transpiration. Okay, so the light intensity is actually causing the guard cells to open, and the fact that the guard cells to open the stomata, and the fact that the stomata are open leads to this higher rate of transpiration. However, at night, right? Let's say it's nighttime. Okay, this is meant to be a moon. It doesn't really look like one, but whatever. At night time, there is not going to be a lot of photosynthesis occurring because the light intensity is so low. Okay, photosynthesis requires light to work, and if the light intensity is low, it's not going to happen. So the guard cells, don't need to open the stomata anymore. They don't need CO2 because photosynthesis isn't happening. So the guard cells close the stomata, and therefore the rate of transpiration is reduced. Okie doke. So, next, we're going to speak about temperature. Okay, temperature. Okay, so a higher temperature leads to a higher rate of transpiration. Okay, there's a good reason for this. If you increase the temperature, then the particles, in this case being water, directly have a higher amount of energy. They vibrate more, and therefore diffusion and evaporation occur faster. Okay, so the water molecules, okay, you could say particles, but more specifically in this case it's water molecules, have a higher energy, and so vibrate more. Okay, this leads to a higher rate of evaporation and diffusion. Okay, because remember, the water molecules are going to be diffusing out of the leaf via the stomata, and if that's happening faster as a result of a higher temperature, then you're going to have a higher rate of transpiration. Okay, so next we'll talk about airflow. Okay, and by airflow we mean, is it windy or is the air really calm? Now, when it's windy, this provides the perfect conditions for transpiration to occur. Okay, and there's a reason for that. Remember, we just mentioned that for transpiration to occur, the water molecules need to diffuse out of the leaf. And if they're going to be diffusing out of the leaf, then they need a concentration gradient. And if you have a higher airflow, then that moves the water away from the leaf as the water diffuses out. And let me show you that in a diagram. So let's say, for example, that this is our leaf, okay? And we're going to say that in this first scenario, there is no wind whatsoever. The air is really calm. You'll see that there is a concentration gradient, clearly, of water molecules, right? From inside the leaf, we're going to say that this is the leaf, to outside the leaf. So what's going to happen is the water is going to diffuse from the leaf. Okay, so it might be like this, etc., etc., until we have the concentration inside and outside the leaf being the same, and so there's no more concentration gradient. Right? You see that I've got 4 circles outside and 4 inside. If there's no wind, the water's just going to stay there, right? The water isn't going to be blown away from the leaf. It's just going to stay there, and so you've lost your concentration gradient, and so the rate of transpiration now is going to slow down. Okay? Now, let's say that now we're going to have a scenario where we have a load of wind. Okay, and I'm going to draw that in some color, red. There is a strong wind that way. Now when the water decides to diffuse out, okay, obviously it doesn't decide, it just does it because it's a random process. So when the water diffuses out, okay, now because of the wind, it's blown away. Okay, it's blown away from the leaf. Now there's still a concentration gradient from inside to outside, and so more water is going to leave. And so transpiration is actually occurring faster because you're maintaining that concentration gradient. Then this is blown away, etc., etc. More water will go in the leaf, more water will leave, and that means that transpiration is occurring faster. Okay, so it's all to do with concentration gradients. So I'm just going to say that on a windy day, the rate of transpiration is increased as the wind moves the water away from the leaf, maintaining a concentration gradient. Okay, maintaining. There we go. Okie doke. Now the last one is humidity. Okay, humidity. And humidity is basically how damp or how moist is the air. Okay, so a higher humidity reduces the rate of transpiration. Okay, a dry day increases the rate of transpiration. Okay, and I'm going to use the same diagram to show you why. So let's put these water molecules back. Right, here we go. Like so. Now, on a dry day, let's get rid of this wind, these wind arrows. On a dry day, there's no water outside the leaf to start with, right? And so there is a massive concentration gradient from the inside to out, and so we're going to get a fast rate of diffusion of water out of the leaf. Okay? But what about if it was really humid? Well, if it was really humid, what would actually be happening is we would already have water in the air, and that water in the air is outside the leaf. Okay, now there is not a large concentration gradient, so rather than all the water rushing out, maybe one will rush out, okay, and then maybe one will come in now and again, and you could have a small concentration gradient which leads to a lower rate of diffusion. Okay, that means that you have a lower rate of transpiration. Okay, so it's similar to the last one, but it's if you already have water outside of the leaf, the concentration gradient is therefore reduced. Okay, and that is why a high humidity or a humid day actually reduces rate of transpiration, and having a low humidity or dry air increases the rate of transpiration because there is a concentration gradient. Alright, so lastly we're going to have a look at the guard cells. And the guard cells look something like this, right? This is 2 guard cells. Okay, so each one of these is a guard cell. Now, in between is the stoma, right? Multiple being called stomata, okay? But one of them is called a stoma. Alright, now, importantly, let's move this. Importantly, stomata are open when a plant has lots of water. Okay, this is because they need CO2 for photosynthesis, and opening the stomata allows them to obtain it from the air and also release waste oxygen. Right, so they want to be open when the plant has enough water. When the plant doesn't have enough water, they want to be closed because they want to reduce the rate of transpiration and stop any more water being lost via transpiration, or at least slow it down greatly. Now, how does this work? Well, what happens is these cells have a thick wall, okay, on the inside and a thinner wall on the outside. Okay, so the guard cells have a thick inner wall and a thin outer wall, okay, giving them a kidney shape. Okay, so they're not just perfectly spherical, they've got this kidney shape, as you can see. Now, when they're full up with water, they look like this. Okay, so like this diagram, when they're full up with water, basically what's happened is the cell becomes turgid, and so these 2 walls here push against each other and create this opening, which is the stoma, or the stomata in plural. Yep. So, when filled with water, the cell is turgid, which causes the thick wall to push against one another. Right, it should be the thick walls. Let me just change that. And create the opening. Okay. However, when they are not filled with water, so this is when the plant doesn't have too much water, the cells are flaccid. Yep. The cells do not push against one another, and therefore the gap closes, right? So imagine they didn't have enough water for these walls to push against one another. Instead, what would happen is they're basically almost floppy, and that wall, which is like this at the moment, would look something like this. Okay, obviously not colored in as much as that. And on the other one, it would look the same. It would look something like this. And notice that now the walls are touching, and so there's no opening. That opening being the stomata, and so now that opening is not there anymore. Okay, and that is basically how the guard cells open and close the stomata based on how much water the plant has. Okay, also they are sensitive to the amount of light there is. So, guard cells are also sensitive to light intensity, and it will close at night and open during the day, right? You don't need to know the mechanism for that. So the last thing I'd say is that the guard cells are found underneath the leaf, right? If you remember our diagram, the guard cells are on the bottom, basically in the lower epidermis of the leaf. If you haven't, or if you don't remember what that means, go and have a look at my video on plant cell organization, where I go through all the different tissues that you find in plant leaves. So they're on the bottom, and basically the reason for that is that the bottom of the leaf will experience a lower light intensity than the top, and also therefore it's going to be cooler than the top, right? Because they're not going to be in as much direct sunlight. This means that less water is lost from the bottom of the leaf than it would be if it was on the top, because if they're on the top, then there would be a higher temperature and so more transpiration would occur. Okay, so that about does it for this video. I hope you understand what guard cells now are, and the role that they play in opening and closing the stomata, and also, of course, the different variables which affect the rate of transpiration. So if you still don't understand anything, then please feel free to put a comment in the box below or send me a direct email. But I hope that helped. As usual, please like and subscribe because it helps me out and you'll be notified when new videos come available. But I look forward to seeing you in the next one.